This video proudly brought to you by the fine people at HOUSMADE Industrial. What is going on? Welcome back to the OG Frenchie. We are back at it today. I'm out in the shop working on the Persian Fighter. This is week number 3 of working on this blade. In the first episode, we worked on the billet and getting that put together. The second episode was mainly profiling and removing the forge scale and kind of getting ready for this build. In this episode, we're jumping straight into shaping the tang. I start by putting on the file guide and getting most of that done with the belt grinder. Then we're going to jump to putting this in the vise and finishing it off with some files. I really want to take my time with this step, and I want to make sure that there is a nice step down on the flat part of the tang, and that way the tang will be thinner than the ricasso, and we'll be able to have a nice fit up when we go to put our guard on. Now, forming the tang does take quite a while, and what I'm trying to do is round over the edges and make sure that I'm not leaving sharp corners where the tang meets the ricasso. Hopefully that will help with stress when we go to swing, chop, and use this blade. Now, this takes quite a while because I'm taking my time and I'm trying to do this right, but once we get it done, we're ready to move on to the guard, and I'll share with you a little bit about my thoughts on this guard. Okay, now that we have the tang rounded over, we're going to talk about the guard. Now, I have this huge chunk of mild steel. This came off of something from work, and it was trash or a leftover piece. And the reason I'm choosing this is due to its thickness. Like I talked about in the last episode, I want to create a guard that has some depth and volume to it. I want something that's going to feel like it's 3-dimension instead of something just flat and round. So that's why I'm choosing this piece. I think it's going to be challenging because it's so thick, but my idea here, let's get it in the light so you can see. You can kind of see I went ahead and traced out the guard shape on here. But what I'm thinking about here is if we're looking at the front of the guard and the knife is going to be coming out this way, then this is kind of the profile you'll see. And then when you go to turn it, I'm hoping we can get the front of this to kind of come down and then out. So it kind of has that 3D sort of feel. So it'll have the larger portion out towards the front, and then I'm hoping we can remove a bunch of material back here and keep these little things up here kind of thin to where we may be able to bend them. And then we'll have kind of the body of this slowly taper out towards the handle. Really all I did to come up with this idea was to take a sheet of paper, and fold it in half and draw out the design, and then cut it out once it's folded, and then you have a mirrored image. I'm still new to doing this, and I haven't really done a whole lot of guard planning, and I'm just sharing with you kind of how my brain is looking at this and what I'm trying to do to accomplish this task. I'm sure there's an easier way to do this, but at least for now, this is kind of where I'm at and what I'm thinking. So I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and start getting this shape cut out, at least from this angle, and then we'll go ahead and drill the holes and we'll start shaping this thing out. I just recently got this, and this is a pretty cool little tool for knife making. This works really good if you don't have a perfectly flat piece. We'll use this as an example. Let's say this was your knife. You would be able to take a set of calipers, measure the width, and half that, and then scribe your line down the center. But if you have a billet or a knife that isn't perfectly the same width, which this one is not, it's close, but it's not perfect, then something like this comes in handy. This works just by putting it down here and turning it, and then you can see that it finds the center even when it changes slightly. Hopefully that makes sense. These are pretty inexpensive and they're great for knife making. Here's a shot of the blade after we have used the center scribe tool, and you can see that that center line is pretty well dead center. It is a great tool, and it really is inexpensive. I think I paid 10 or 15 bucks for it. Definitely worth the money. Also, too, off camera, I took a little bit of time to lay out some visual lines for me where the tang is going to go. And that way, it just gives me a visual representation as I'm drilling out the material. I want to make sure I keep the drill bit inside of those lines. This guard is massive. It is a super thick piece of mild steel. It's probably about an inch deep, and it took forever to drill all of these holes. I used a drill bit that was quite a bit smaller than what it needed to be, so I also had to take a lot of time with the hand Dremel, and I probably was at this a good 3 hours trying to remove the rest of this material, being careful not to remove too much, but get it just right. This really did test my patience and took up quite a bit of time. Well, I've been grinding away with this diamond disc for about 5 minutes, and that's how much metal I've removed. So yeah, it's going pretty good. And to top things off, it is currently 11 degrees. So yeah, pretty awesome out here. Definitely having a great morning out in the shed. Freezing my buns off trying to remove this tiny bit of steel. Yeah. Anyway, like I said, it's a process. Gotta keep at it. Hopefully you can see that. For the most part, you know, we've got a pretty decent slot going. Now it's just trying to fine-tune the innards of this, as I have the outside of this cut almost to the exact width of the ricasso. You can see I've got one little spot here that has a little bit of a dip, hoping that that won't end up showing, but you know, I'm trying. What can you do except to keep going? All right, so after many hours sitting here filing and working on this thing, we are now looking good. It looks like it is coming straight out of the mild steel. So that is great. And there aren't any gaps, which is awesome. Now there is a little bit of a gap up here. You can see it here and here. And that's not great, but what's awesome about this being mild steel is I can now weld the top of this. I'll take the knife out, weld up front here, and then I'll just have a little tiny bit of material to go ahead and refile so that we can close that gap up. So it shouldn't be too big of a deal. It's just going to take a little bit of extra time. Anyway, now that that part is done, thank God, we're finally ready to start cutting away more of the material and begin the process of shaping out the guard. Before we begin removing material, if you remember, I went ahead and drew out the pattern of our guard prior to slotting it. Now that the blade is in here, I want to make sure before we start removing this that the guard is going to be in line with the blade as it's sitting currently. And it's close, but it's not perfect. So my idea for this would be to use this handy dandy Machinist Ruler from HOUSMADE. A nice little 6-incher. It's got 32nds and 64ths. And definitely cool. I've been waiting to use this little guy, and this is the perfect place to use it. So my idea here is to put it flat against the blade on this side, mark out the lines, then do the other side, making sure it's flat, marking out the lines, and then it should give us a nice center line. And then that way we can just make sure that when we go to start scribing or tracing this guard out, that it lines up. And that way when you're looking at it, the tip of the guard here will be right in line with the spine, and vice versa down here at the bottom. So anyway, that's what I'm going to do. We'll go ahead and throw it on here, get it scribed, and then we'll go ahead and take the time to redraw the guard. So you may not be able to see it well, but I definitely can. There's a good line there on that side. And we'll go ahead and hit this other side. And just like that, we now have a good way to look at the center of where this guard is going to be at. So now I'll just take the time to retrace it and get to removing some of this material. Once we get the guard shape rescribed onto the mild steel, we're ready to go ahead and bring it to the bandsaw and the grinder. It's hard to see in the shot, but I can see the lines really well, and that just helps kind of guide me of where to take and remove the material. Everything about this darn guard is really just taking a long time, and we're almost 13 minutes into this video, so spoiler alert, I didn't get a ton done. This just took forever. You can see I'm feverishly working to remove this material. It's really just thick and it's taking a long time. But that's the thing about knife making. It's not all quenches and fireballs and awesomeness. It's a lot of really hard work behind the scenes to get to an awesome knife. All right, so we have our rough drawing of this sketch, and we have this down to a somewhat workable size. I think I've decided to remove some more material off of it. If I put this in the place where the guard is, we have the knife sitting in here like so. We can then look over top to kind of see where we need these lines to go inside of the, or onto the guard, rather. So that's kind of how I'm doing this. You know, I'm sure, again, there may be a better way to do it, but as of right now, that's kind of how I am choosing to go about plotting out this guard. This is a hefty piece of mild steel. I bet you this thing alone probably weighs somewhere around 3 pounds. So it's still a lot of material. Now I am obviously going to remove a bunch. All of this stuff here is going to come off, so that should shave off a bunch. But I don't want it to be too hefty. That would bring down the wieldability of this knife. I want it to still be light and nimble. For now, what we're going to do is we're going to remove a lot of this outer material that I think is just extra and that we don't need, and then we'll go ahead and start cutting away this material here. Now we're back over at the bandsaw, and we're going to quickly remove some of this guard material off the backside. Cutting it on the bandsaw is just pretty fast compared to trying to grind it away. But once we get it cut, we're going to head over to the small wheel attachment that I have for the belt grinder. HOUSMADE was kind enough to send this to me for free. And if you're interested in a small wheel attachment for your belt grinder, I highly recommend this version from HOUSMADE. It is fantastic, and it comes with a bunch of different diameter wheels. This attachment is absolutely necessary for making knives. If you want to learn more about it, I have another video that I'll link in the description that goes over some of the details about this small wheel attachment. Now this is probably 15 minutes worth of footage that I'm condensing down into 30 seconds. It does take a while, but I finally do get at least a good stopping point for this week's episode. So, a stopping point, you say? Why yes, a stopping point, because I'm simply out of time for this week. Whose idea was this to do one episode a week? That's putting a lot of pressure on me to get stuff done, and this episode didn't get a whole lot done now, did I? We did get some important stuff done, like shaping the tang. And you say to yourself, okay, cool, we can shape tangs in our sleep, dude. Why did it take you a week? Well, you know, it just did. Sorry about that. With the tang shaped and the guard starting to actually look a little bit like a guard, I think we're going to be okay with the progress that we made this week. Now, if you notice too, the guard is a little bit smaller in this direction and a little longer down here. And the reason I did that is because my plan, maybe for next week, I might not do it next week. I don't know yet. Eventually, my plan is going to be to take this and bend it some. I'm not really sure which way I'm even bending it yet, but I know I'm going to bend it so that when it's all said and done, I'll have a little finger groove here for the knife. The actual block of wood that's going to be sitting on here, I think I've decided to use this cool piece. And the profile kind of has it kicked down some, which I really like. And I mean, that right there is gonna be a banger. And even though I didn't make a whole lot of progress this week, this right here is gonna be a banger, baby. This right here is this right here is gonna be a banger, dog. Okay, it's gonna be a banger, dude. Okay, you see how the handle's down like that? You see how I really didn't do much work? I'm so stupid. I know it may not seem like a ton of progress, but I did promise one video a week and just to share the progress that I do make. Like I said earlier, knife making is a lot of fun, but it's not all, you know, Hollywood, so to speak. It's not all beauty and glamour shots. A lot of it is sitting at the vise filing for hours. That's just how it is. Anyway, I really appreciate you guys watching and hanging out with me this week. Next week, we're going to be getting back in to working on this. Now, we have some weather coming in, so that may also limit my time out here some, but I'm going to try to keep at this, and we'll see what we end up doing next week. I'm thinking that I may hold off on the guard and call it good for now, and we might jump into either cutting out some of this block and getting it prepared, or we may get into the bevels. I'm going to be honest, I'm a little nervous about doing the bevels because I want them to look good, and I'm not the best on the 2x7E2. If I take my time, I can maybe get it to look how I want. We'll just have to see when we get there. For now, I really appreciate you guys watching. As always, it means a lot, and I look forward to catching you in the next episode next week. We'll see you there.